Everybody ready? Ready? Okay, let me say good evening to all of you who are present this evening for our regular scheduled meeting of the Garner Town Council. Thank you for being here, and we have a lot to cover tonight, so we're going to move through this as expeditiously as we can. We'll start with asking the town clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Marshburn?
I'm present.
Mayor Pro Tem Vance?
Here.
Councilmember Matthews?
Here.
Councilmember Singleton?
Here.
Councilmember Dellinger?
Here.
And Councilmember Behringer? Here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Council, for being present this evening. We're going to begin our meeting, as we usually do, with the Pledge of Allegiance and also an invocation. I'm calling on Councilmember Phil Matthews to lead us. There you go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. ABC.
Let's pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight and ask for your wisdom and guidance as we go through our council meeting and deliberate the issues that concern our community and make wise decisions. Lord, we pray for the nation of Israel and all the conflict that is going on and over there, that you just have your way and one day maybe bring peace to that area. We pray for those that are sick and hurting, Lord, and Lord, we just pray for peace one day in the world. We be with our military, protect them, bring them back home safe. And we lift these prayers up to you in your name. Amen.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Matthews. Okay, we'll begin tonight with something called petitions and comments. So let me read you some introductory remarks regarding that. This is the portion of the meeting is to receive comments from the public on items not included in this agenda. Citizens should sign up with the town clerk to speak prior to the start of the meeting. The board is interested in hearing your concerns, but may not take action or deliberate on subject matter brought up during the petitions and comment segment. Topics requiring further investigation will be referred to the appropriate town officials or staff and may be scheduled for a future agenda. And I see that we have one individual who has signed up to speak tonight. I will remind speakers, if you will, we ask you to keep your comments to a range of 3 to 4 minutes at most, and we will listen respectively as you speak. I have a Miss Hadley who has been in contact and desires to speak tonight, so I'll recognize you at this time, ma'am, and welcome.
Hello, good evening.
Hello.
Thank you so much for your time. You all know me at this point. I wanted to make sure that I was continuing conversation, as I have been, with the Wake County School Board, in addition to the planning department, to really, this is nothing that we're going to solve in the next 5 minutes here, but just wanting to make sure for a public record that we are conveying on behalf of my neighborhood in Magnolia Park and neighboring Oak Park, that we are working with the school board, but a lot of this is gray, and that's what I talked about last time. I did share the article that I worked on with WRAL, essentially working to even educate the public on, as the more that we zoom into this picture, we realize we have to zoom out, understand that, and then zoom back in. So whatever you guys can do to support that, again, I have not been given a lot of information that I've been trying to dive into. And I use the word I, but really I'm just speaking on behalf of my community over just down the road. And so we're trying to understand a lot. We're trying to understand, even when it comes to the growth of Garner, understanding the long-term infrastructure. For instance, Benson Road, right now, I understand the VA clinic's moving in, Duke Clinic's moving in, Bojangles. I mean, a lot of people, that caught people's attention. That being said, now we're having all these children going back and forth potentially to Aversboro Elementary as well. Right now, average is 4 to 11 miles per hour on Benson Road from the intersection to Timber up towards New Bethel Church. So just really trying to understand, these are just everyday type questions that are being brought to me as someone who is trying to help, especially people newly moving to Garner. This is the first time some people have even been to this country, and they're really just trying to understand and navigate literally and figuratively in this area. And then just anything that could be provided to us to understand on the broader picture. I know that, everyone's really focused on the election tomorrow, and I know that there is a unopposed situation for the mayor, but anything that the community and the people of Garner that could be helpful in educating them in terms of what it takes and really for them to be active members in the community would really be appreciated when it comes to an outreach and education perspective as well. Thanks. That's all I
Okay,
had.
thank you very much for your comments. We'll consider those, and as you mentioned, there is an election tomorrow, so I won't wait till the end of the meeting to encourage everybody to get out and vote tomorrow. It's a very important opportunity for our citizens, and it's a civic responsibility as far as I'm concerned. So thank you for taking the time to be here this evening. Okay, I'm now going to call on the council to adopt the agenda for the evening, and I should note that there are a couple of caveats, I believe, if I get them correctly here. I believe there's been either a consensus or a polling to remove items 2 and 3 from the segment under new and old business. Counselor, you're aware of that, is that correct? Okay.
Just item 2 under new and old business.
And item 3. Yeah,
Item 3 is also is not ready for action this evening.
Not on my agenda.
it's not on the electronic agenda, but some may have the paper agenda, Mayor,
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah.
and we need to clarify some of the term limits
Yeah,
before we bring that back.
that was the one for the appointment.
No, that's on my agenda. The comp plan is not on my agenda.
Oh,
I mean, I'm sitting here looking at it right now. But hey, that's okay. As long as we know the 2 items, they are.
okay,
I
yes.
believe the Garner Forward plan is being moved forward to the next meeting on November 21st. Is that correct?
Correct, that's the
Yes,
plan. That's
yes,
the plan. yes.
yeah.
Plan.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay,
Be re-advertised because it was removed from the agenda.
exactly. Okay, with those notes, did I cover everything, Ms. Jones, as it relates to the regular agenda? So with those notations, I'll call for a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Okay, motion properly made and seconded. If you favor approving the agenda, would you vote aye?
Aye.
And if there's any opposition, no, and there is none. So thank you very much. We now will go to a presentation, and I think I skipped that before, did I? Let me find my spot here. Yes, I'm sorry. I'd like to recognize Mayor Pro Tem Elmo Vance, who will share with you a proclamation that was declared earlier this week, and I wanted to share it here this evening at our meeting. And we'll recognize, as part of this, Miss Amy White, who is here with us this evening. So, Mr. Vance, if you would like to present that, please do so.
Proclamation designating the month of November 2023 as Hunger Action Month in Garner. Whereas 1 in every 6 children in the state of North Carolina is food insecure, whereas there are 213,890 individuals who live in a food insecure household in Wake County, and the 10 total local counties served by the Food Bank of Central and Eastern North Carolina. Of those 213,890 individuals, 72,290 are children, and 69,807 are senior citizens living at or below the poverty level. Whereas in the town of Garner, over 50% of the children who attend Garner area public schools would qualify for free or reduced lunch subsidy program, and those same children may possibly go without a hot breakfast or lunch in the 185 days that school is in session. Whereas there are multiple faith and civic organizations in the town of Garner who mount individual year-long efforts to fight hunger in our community, including, but not limited to, Community of Hope Ministries, Angie's Restaurant, Butterball, LLC, Garner Midday Rotary Club, the Capitol Church, Garner Area Ministries, Juniper Level Baptist Church, the Poole Family YMCA, Turner Memorial Baptist Church, Backpack Buddies, and Meals on Wheels. Whereas food supply chain issues and significant inflation have plagued food pantry and food resource outlets, placing financial pressure on those locations to continue to be able to afford to provide high quality and consistent access to nutritional items for families in need. Whereas food pantries have documented a 70% increase in the cost of purchasing groceries over the last year to protect food inventory supplies. Whereas residents of Garner are generous people who, through both private and public efforts, share their abundance to join hands and hearts to fight against hunger. Whereas on this first day of November in 2023, a group of interested citizens and business leaders have gathered at Community of Hope Ministries in the gymnasium at First Baptist Church of Garner to participate in the No Lunch, a soup kitchen style lunch offering only a bowl of soup and a roll to its guests. And whereas at this No Lunch, Community of Hope has elevated the awareness of real and present food insecurity issues facing Garner most challenged families. Therefore, be it resolved that on this first day of November 2023, I hereby resolve that November be declared Hunger Action Month in Garner in recognition of all the efforts already offered by many of the efforts in the coming few weeks that will be dedicated to helping families experience temporary relief from the stress of poverty during the coming holiday season. Be it also resolved that a charge shall be made to our town and its residents to join hands, hearts, and resources to eliminate food insecurity in our community. Signed, Ken Marshburn, Mayor, Garner, North Carolina. Amy, thank you so much for all you do, sister.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Appreciate
for the
you.
proclamation. Yes.
Thank you. Ms. White, we'll invite you for any comments you'd like to make.
Well, I will be brief. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Town Council members, staff. It's a joy to represent Community of Hope Ministries this evening, but to stand here also representing the other community organizations, individuals, and businesses who fight year-long to battle food insecurity in our community. As I shared last week during the No Lunch, this is real. It's families living in the greater Garner area who are living just one paycheck away from disaster. And because of the generosity of our community, from the support of this amazing town, for the community-based organizations that work together, this town is an amazing place to live and work and to raise a family. And we don't want to see any family suffer. So it's when the town stands before you and issues a proclamation like this that just elevates food insecurity and builds awareness for that need, it allows others in our community who have just a little to make a giant impact on organizations like Community of Hope and many others who are trying to solve this problem one day at a time. Thank you for your time this evening. This is an amazing proclamation, and I hope I will be standing before you in 2024, and we will have next November issued as Hunger Action Month again. Thank you. Have a great night.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah, let's. You're fine, yeah. Thank you, Amy. Okay. Okay, that's the one presentation we have for the evening, so we will now go to the consent agenda. Again, I think there's just one slight caveat that I would note that I don't think it requires bringing off the consent agenda. On the segment that has to do with our schedule of meetings for 2024, I've conferred some with our town attorney, and the segment around the time of election next year, there's a date given of either the 4th or 5th, and we probably need to go ahead and declare specifically for now, and it could be changed later, which one of those dates we would offer up for meeting. My recommendation would be that it not be on the election day itself, but be on the day before that, which I believe would be November the 4th. Is that correct? So, council, with that one item noted, unless anybody needs to pull any other agenda item, I would ask you to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Probably seconded. If you favor the consent agenda, would you vote aye?
Aye.
Opposition, no, and there is none. Okay. Okay, we will now move to the business portion of our agenda, and the first item there is public hearing. And I should note that the first public hearing is a special use permit, SUP SP 2208 Gregory Pool. I will note that this is a quasi-judicial hearing, and so I'm going to read intro relating to those hearings and how they should be conducted. I would ask you, if you're here to testify at this particular public hearing, that you might go ahead and go back to the clerk's desk in the corner and go ahead and be sworn in while I'm covering the judicial hearing process. So under state law, the parties are entitled to a fair hearing and an impartial decision maker. And so I must ask council members, do any of you have a fixed opinion prior to the hearing that is not subject to change? Or have you had any ex parte communications? Or do you have any close familial, business, or other associational relationship with an affected person, or have a financial interest in the outcome? If so, you should notate that now. Anybody? Okay. Thank you. This is a fact-finding hearing, and only competent material and substantial evidence that is not repetitive is allowed. Only expert witnesses based on training and experience may testify as to impacts on property values, traffic safety, or noise levels. Council members are only allowed to receive factual information during the hearing and are not allowed to discuss the case outside of the hearing. And the town clerk will swear in witnesses for this case, and hopefully you've already done that. Okay, everybody is covered? Thank you. All right. With that being said, then I'm going to call on town staff to make the opening presentation on this particular item, and we will move from there, and I'll officially open the public hearing at this time. Okay, thank you. Ms. Harris?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and town council members. I am Allison Jones, and I will be presenting the case for Gregory Pool, special use permit, SUP SP 2208. The applicant is Gregory Pool Equipment Company, and it's located at 500 North Greenfield Parkway. The tract size is about 36 acres, and the request to establish an office and warehouse with flex space, along with outside storage laydown area on the 36-acre tract located in North Greenfield Parkway Industrial Park. The proposed use is office and flex space warehouse with laydown area. The current zoning is, well, at the time of the application, the zoning was MXD1. And as we all know, back in July 2022, the town went through a new UDO, so the current zoning is now light industrial. At the time of application, the overlay district was I-40 overlay, and now it is the limited access highway overlay. The setbacks are 30 feet for the front, rear, and side are 0 feet, and the corner is 30 feet. Neighborhood meeting information. Staff identified 55 properties within the no vacation radius area and were mailed those first-class notices. The neighborhood meeting was held at the Garner Senior Center at 6 p.m. on June 23rd, 2022, with 4 people in attendance. The neighborhood meeting information was included in your agenda packet. And here is the overall view of the site. Parking right here, and the existing Butterball facility is right here, and the Deer Harbor Apartments are south of the project, and the laydown areas, the North Carolina Railroad is right behind the project area as well. And here is the overall, the elevations for the site. There's no open space required for this project as it is a non-residential development. Landscaping buffer requirements, the tree coverage, the sliding scale between 10 and 12% at the rule at the time of submittal. They're preserving the tree canopy, and they're also meeting requirements with preservation and new canopy plantings. For street and perimeter buffers, the street buffer width is 15 feet, and there will be trees provided every 40 feet for that buffer requirement. And the perimeter buffer, there's no buffer in between on the western boundary because that is a boundary between another industrial development, so no buffer is required between those two. And there's a 15-foot buffer, 65-foot buffer on the eastern side. The 65-foot buffer is on the near the existing residential neighborhood, so that's why the buffer is wider on that area. And the northern buffer is 25 feet, which will be behind the railroad tracks. Not behind, but with the railroad tracks. And screening for the outdoor storage areas. The outdoor storage area must be screened from the public right-of-ways and adjacent properties at a minimum of 6 feet in height. The vehicle surface area must be screened from public right-of-ways and adjacent properties with a minimum 3 feet in height of landscaping. The screening requirements will be met with a combination of fencing, a vinyl-coated black chain fence with slats, and vegetation. Lighting. The lighting for this project meets the UDO and staff policy regarding LED fixtures. The fixtures have a 0 uplight, low glare, and warm light exhibiting color temperature of no more than 4,000 Kelvin. The parking. Parking for flex space is 1 use per 500 square feet. And then parking for warehouse is 1 space for every 2 employees on maximum shift, but not less than 5,000 square feet of area devoted to the use. Parking for office use is 1 space for every 300 square feet. Parking for vehicle per pair is 5 spaces per bay plus 1 space for each employee. And parking for manufacturing and production is 1 space for every 2 employees on maximum shift, or 1 space per 200 square foot of gross floor area as most appropriate. They're required to have 232 parking spaces. They're providing 294. The inspections department, along with the fire department, has reviewed these plans and they approved them as presented. There are no FEMA designated floodplains or streams within this project boundary. However, there are a little wetland area towards the middle of this project, and one of their conditions of approval will to have get permission from the governing authority to encroach those wetlands. The stormwater management. This commercial project is subject to nitrogen water quality requirements as well as water quantity requirements for the 1, 10, and 25-year storms. Both requirements are being handled as a part of overall master plan for Greenfield North project, as opposed to each site providing its own stormwater control measures. This project will drain into the existing dry detention pond downstream within the commercial subdivision, Greenfield Parkway, as I already mentioned. The nitrogen offset payments already been paid for the entire subdivision, so this will not be a requirement. Water and sewer. The site will be served by a City of Raleigh water and sewer infrastructure. Both water and sewer will be connected through the existing mains on North Greenfield Parkway. Sidewalks and roads. There will be 3 driveways onto North Greenfield Parkway for this project. There's one new median break will be provided on the eastern entrance, and the existing break at the western entrance will be slightly modified. Curb and gutter are existing. Sidewalks will be installed along North Greenfield Parkway and into the site. Following technical review and plan revision, staff finds this project as proposed may be considered consistent with the UDO so long as the following conditions are met. Prior to the building permit issuance of building permit, a voluntarily annexation petition shall be submitted to the planning department. Prior to issuance of building permit, payment of engineering inspection fees shall be paid to the town of Garner. Prior to the issuance of building permit, payment of public utility fees shall be paid to the City of Raleigh. And prior to the issuance of building permit, the wetland impacts that I just mentioned will be required to be received by the planning department prior to the building permit being issued. And prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy, the stormwater control measures maintenance plan and in the memorandum of agreement shall be recorded with Wake County Register of Deeds. That is the end of my presentation. I'm available for questions, and the applicant is also here too as well if you would have any questions for the applicant too.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Jones. Yeah, I'll see if council has any particular questions. Thank you for your presentation. So I'll start to my left with Mr. Matthews if he has anything.
No question, sir.
Go to Mr. Singleton. Mr. Dellinger, anything?
Applicant have a presentation?
She said
they
he did, yeah.
Plan to present or just take questions?
I don't have a presentation, but I have the whole entire site plan available if it's something specific you want to see, but I'm not sure if they have a presentation.
Yep, okay. Well, I have a couple questions. In our packet, there is a map listed as Exhibit B. It looks like it was prepared by Withers Ravenel, and it has certain buffers on it and preservation areas, but they're not very clearly delineated as to what is just a buffer and then what is just tree preservation. And so I want to know, it doesn't seem to be captured in the special use permit about the permanence of those buffers and preservation areas. And I mention it because this apartments to the south seem to have been significantly impacted in their site design by the presence of wetlands. There are 2 wetland areas. There appear to be 2 wetland areas based on IMAPs on this property, and the site plan kind of ignores those wetlands. And so I'm kind of curious as to, is there a plan B if they're not able to build where those wetlands are, and would those change the amount of the allocation of buffer and preservation on other parts of the property?
Well, the tree preservation, the buffer area, well, I can say for like in this, you see right here, a lot of that right now is existing trees. And so those trees will meet some of the buffer requirements, the permanent buffer requirements, and also meet the tree preservation requirements. So I can show you on a site plan sheet that shows like, it kind of gives you an idea what's there now, and it'll show you like where the permanent buffer / tree preservation will be preserved.
Yep. So do you have the one with the green areas on it?
So, yes, I think I have that. Give me 1 second, pull it up.
That's different than the one in our packet, though. So,
Okay, well, okay. I guess the one you're referring to is a neighborhood meeting packet. I have the actual one that is being approved today.
the one in our packet's dated June 23, 2022, Exhibit B.
I don't.
And it's showing tree preservation buffer along Greenfield Parkway.
Okay, so the tree preservation along Greenfield Parkway is still there. If you,
Those look like 40-foot spaced replanted trees.
so what you're looking at is from the neighborhood meeting that was had last year. This one that is we're showing you right now in the approved site plan, we've gone through a couple of revisions, and this will be what's be preserved. So they're still preserving some. Oh, it's not working, but this area, there's still tree preservation along Greenfield Parkway, and you have some preservation back up in here too as well. To answer your question about a Plan B, if they can't get that permit from the wetland, with the permit issuing authority, then they would have to come in for a site plan modification.
And most of those wetlands would be taken up. They would then include tree preservation that would be shifted probably from somewhere else. So the bottom southeast corner,
The wetlands are up in kind of like in this area right here on this.
yeah, there are two branches of the wetlands that go there and then to the east. But the bottom southeast corner, which was presented in our packet, has a 65-foot buffer against those residences. And I guess again, what was presented, what we had in our packet was tree preservation all along Greenfield Parkway, directly across from the residential, and then this down in the corner. And so my concern is if they can't build where the site plan says they can have buildings, then that becomes a tree preservation area, and then tree preservation gets taken away from somewhere else.
Yes, but, I understand what was in the packet, but the site plan is showing that the tree preservation still is being preserved over that area where you're talking about the southeast corner, the 65, and that's still being preserved right now as well.
Right.
As far as the tree preservation along Greenfield Parkway, this area right here is still being preserved. And the preservation area along this area where it's probably shown in your packet, that can't be preserved because that area right there will be considered, I think they have to do some things in the frontage improvements for this one, but they can't preserve area in which they have to do work in, so you can't count as preservation. That makes sense.
You look like you have a response.
Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Dave Bartone. I'm with Withers Ravenel, and I'm the project manager for this project. Everybody is really close to the truth on this. The earlier plan that you saw showed a strip of preservation, and what we were doing with that strip of preservation, we were counting that towards our calculations. And working with the town, we're not allowed to do so, so we took off that area of counted area. It's still being preserved, but we could not count that area towards our figures. So there's an existing sidewalk along that frontage. We're putting trees in along that sidewalk, and an area or a strip back behind that area into our property is being preserved as well.
Like 25, like a 25-foot.
I believe it's 25. I don't know the exact. Is it about 25 foot of preservation?
Hey, Nicole Steele, landscape architect on the project. So for the purposes of the impact of, like Allison was saying for construction and how we require the 10-foot beyond the tree preservation, we opted to not count that as tree preservation at this time. However, the limited disturbance does vary along that frontage, and so what trees we can protect, we will. We just didn't want to guarantee it in perpetuity as part of that tree preservation. And so that's why we've selected a few areas around the site that we know we will not impact and can preserve with construction to meet the needs of the site design. So does that answer your question there?
Yeah, so it's not guaranteed and probably dependent on the wetlands question.
Well, do you want to speak to the wetlands?
I do. Yep. Currently, there is one sliver of wetlands right down the middle that's been identified. And we're in the process of working towards an individual permit right now through the state and the Corps of Engineers. That's still in the works. And one of the conditions of our building permit is we must receive that approval as we're proposing, or else we're not allowed to move forward. So there is a protection there for the town.
Wetlands.
Right, that's the wetland strip right there.
I'll pass on to next for.
Yeah, let me see if anybody else has some questions. We'll circle back around. I'm going to recognize Mr. Vance at this time.
I have no questions.
Okay. We'll go back around here. Gray, anything?
Just the wetlands area, it shows here on our agenda package there, and Ms. Jones pulls it up. It's larger, so you can designate it, but it's right beside a proposed driveway as of right now. Right.
Correct. It's right beside the driveway and up into where the building would need to be for the site, basically the site to work.
Right, okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Anything, Ms. Behringer? All right, Mr. Dellinger, I'll go back to you.
Yeah, just some concerns about like not committing a certain amount of preservation, mostly because it's across from the residential. And so in the first plan that you'd submitted, I guess it was done during the neighborhood meeting, it kind of logically makes sense that there's more preservation where it is across the street from the apartments. And then as it gets to industrial, it kind of goes to the normal tree plantings and things. So I just know it's always a shock to residents when the properties across the street get clear cut and where they're, and they're kind of, that particular neighborhood reminds me a little bit of Hunter's Mark. It's kind of end up getting surrounded by industrial.
Right.
And so trying to, preserve a little bit of, I don't know.
We do have a couple different levels of screening there. We do have the street trees. We have supplemental shrubs that alternate within the street tree buffer area. Then there is also the 6-foot opaque fence that's beyond that. I think with where we're at right now in the special use permit, we would want to advance to construction drawings with getting the actual grading in place and everything like that in order to determine how much of that space we can preserve. We just wanted to make sure we were meeting our code requirements and in places that made the most sense for the overall site. I do understand the relationship across the street with the apartments, though.
In this northern tree preservation, there's a buffer there that you're going to preserve on that side, but that's also abutting in light industrial and railroad. So I'm curious as to why you can have the buffer against the light use, but not commit to across from the residential.
So I just spoke with the owner, and if it's accepting of the council, we can accept to provide a 25-foot protected buffer from the right-of-way line, if that would satisfy.
Where it abuts the residential?
Yes, sir.
I'd accept that. That would be good to see.
25 feet from the right-of-way line. So the front 25 feet of their property would be protected trees.
That's in lieu of the new, or I'm asking staff because I don't know whether we're required or have to do.
They're not meeting the ordinance, they'll just have to supplement with additional plantings. And And we already have, I think it's already like a typical buffer we already have established up here. So they'll just add the plantings that are already approved to put in this little typical buffer to fill in those gaps.
Well, there's a good strip of preservation. I kind of envisioned Weston Parkway, if you're familiar, in Cary, where it's almost preferable to keep the natural versus the artificial trees. Like it'd almost be better just to have a natural buffer or in preservation than force. You did plant all those trees, and so I don't know how we condition an either or if anybody else has a preference, or if you all have a preference.
Our plans actually already anticipate supplementing existing vegetation. We typically do that at time of construction, though, to verify what is in the field at that time. And so our preference would also be to use what's existing. It's much more mature and, quite frankly, doesn't cost anything. So, yes, I think priority would be preservation of existing and then supplement as needed to meet the minimum requirements of the UDO.
Okay, while we're pausing and waiting, I'm going to see if these comments have raised any questions from other council members at this time. Anything here? Anything, Ray? Okay.
The 25 foot from the right of way, will be behind the existing sidewalk, for the sidewalk to be built.
That is correct. And I believe that's an existing sidewalk. So yes, it would be behind the sidewalk.
Making sure. That happened, well, anyway, just want to make sure.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else for Mr. Martone while he's there? Vance, anything? Okay. All right. Was the applicant planning to make any other presentation? I know we received, and Ms. Jones, I guess, should I note that we will receive this as part of the evidence presented here?
Yes, I would ask you to accept both the staff report presented in your packet and by Ms. Allison Jones tonight, as well as the letter that was submitted, and adopt that into the record for the hearing.
Yes. So, council, you've heard that. I would suggest, unless you have objection, we will receive it into the record and consider it part of the testimony this evening. Okay? So ordered. All right, anything else?
Just a procedural question for staff, and is how do we word that as part of this, sort of allow that sort of flexibility or change in the attorney, someone?
I want to work with Jeff and maybe Terry, make sure I'm wording it correctly so I won't put them in a hole that can't get anything out of that, and so everybody be happy.
But in making the motion, you would want to note that as a condition to be imposed on this particular approval.
I'm asking for the wording of that.
You want me to tell you the condition right now, or what in the order? I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
If it's going to be put as a condition, I don't know what the language of that condition would be to add it, as the attorney suggested. So I know that's like I want to keep the flexibility of, they sort of said they're good to do the 25-foot undisturbed natural preservation buffer, but if something were to happen and it wasn't feasible or they need to do something different, like I said, I don't want to box them too much into, I'll just do it with the 25-foot then from the right of way.
I think the easiest way might just be to say to go ahead and let's do the 25-foot 25 foot undisturbed, to be supplemented as needed, which would include any needs brought about from construction practicality matters. Something along those lines.
Yeah, I would say as needed and approved by staff, so that there would be a staff review. And if you're comfortable with that, it wouldn't necessarily have to come back to council for an approval.
If you're good, we're finished here. I'm going to see if there's other persons here who, some public hearing, who came and wanted to address the council on this matter. Are there any? Okay, seeing and hearing none, then unless you have other questions for Ms. Jones, I'm going to move towards closing the hearing. Any others? All right. Thank you, Ms. Jones. Do you have a packet there or the motion sheet?
Yes, on page 54 of your packet, the motion worksheet should start there. Get that back up.
So I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for a motion, council.
I found the application SUP-SP 2208 meets the town's 8 criteria for special use permits as identified in Article 3.9.2.d. Therefore, I move that the town council approve SUP-SP 2208 Gregory Pool with the 5 site-specific conditions to be listed on the permit that will be prepared by staff, and also to include a 25 undisturbed buffer to be supplemented as needed and as approved by staff.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? Did I hear? Yeah, okay, thank you, Mr. Erlinger. Any further comment or discussion before we vote? Concerns? Okay, if you approve the motion that is before you, would you vote aye?
Aye.
Aye.
If there's opposition, vote no. Okay, it passes by a vote of all council. Thank you very much. Thank you, you folks. So we can move forward. Okay. All right, we're going to go to item 2 under public hearings. And let's see, I believe is Ms. Harris, but yeah, there she is, okay, presenting on this item. I should note, I guess, Ms. Jones, that this is a matter that was continued from July 18, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. The public hearing was continued.
Okay, so at this time, we will call this matter back to the attention of the council and put it back with the continuation of the hearing.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. This is Jones Sausage Road Assemblage, conditional zoning CZ 2301. The applicant is Garner PBX LLC, Jones Sausage 2. The site is approximately 2.76 acres located on Jones Sausage Road near Martin Branch and Tharrington Roads. This is a Tier 1 request to conditionally rezone from R4 and commercial mixed use to commercial mixed use CMX 270. So this project came to you previously, and as was stated in that public hearing, the purpose of this request is to allow for commercial development and to include an adjacent total of 0.17 acres that are currently zoned residential into the balance of the commercially zoned property. So here is a map of the site location. You can see Jones Sausage Road runs to the south of the site, Tharrington Road just to the north, and then this is the I-40 interchange off of Jones Sausage. There is the existing Hunter's Mark subdivision nearby as well. Just south of this area is the existing Amazon facilities and additional industrial warehousing uses. Here is a picture of the existing conditions. So there are currently a number of homes that are on that site, but they are not currently in use. To the north is zoned combination. There's CMX sort of not directly north, but to the northeast. That is residential and vacant currently. To the south is vacant and residential. East CMX. On the other side of Jones Sausage Road is an existing fuel station, and then west being R4 and residential. There is a limited zoning history in this location. Most recently, you can see the conditional use zoning from 2018 of White Oak Ridge Road from single family to multifamily conditional use. The applicant has proposed a number of conditions, the first of which being a permitted use table with 15 uses proposed from a list of 60 generally permissible uses. Those uses include hotel, motel, medical office, other office, a restaurant, both sit down and drive through, convenience store with or without fuel sales, personal or professional services, banks and financial institutions, sales, retail, microbrewery, microdistillery, minor utility, and concealed telecommunications facility. At the discretion of the Town of Garner Engineering Department, prior to issuance of building permit or recordation of the subdivision plat, whichever is earlier, the property owner is proposing to dedicate a sign easement adjacent to the Jones Sausage Road right-of-way for sufficient size of a 60-foot square foot community service sign. That would be similar to some of the Welcome to Garner signs that you see in other areas of town. Tractor units and semi-trailer trucks shall not be permitted to park between the primary buildings and Jones Sausage Road, except when loading or unloading goods or equipment or refueling on site. If one of the following uses is built on the site, they will provide 2 electrical vehicle charging stations, and those would be the hotel and motel use and the office uses, including that medical office use. The exterior building materials for the principal building will be limited to brick, simulated brick, stone, simulated stone, concrete masonry, cementitious siding, wood, metal, and/or glass. Metal panels and vinyl siding would not be installed on the building exterior. Each principal structure will have a stone or simulated stone wainscoting along the base of the building to at least a height of 36 inches. And metal poles or supports for any canopy structures or freestanding signs would be boxed or otherwise screened. The front facade of any primary building will include at least 1 tower or similar feature that extends vertically at least 18 inches above the roof line, with the roof line meaning the top of the parapet or at the eave. This project does fall into the limited access overlay, which applies to either side of I-440, as well as to the future I-40 and to the future I-540, and is measured from the outside right-of-way line of the roadway as its farthest point. So there are some additional screening for intensive uses that would fall into this overlay. None of those are being proposed at this time since there is no site-specific plan, but should those be proposed, they would have to meet the screening requirements of that ordinance. The overall neighborhood character, so this site is located at the intersections of Martin Branch, Tharrington, and Jones Sausage Road, across from the Speedway LLC property. Jones Sausage Road is currently transforming into a 4-lane collector roadway, which handles high volumes of traffic during morning and afternoon peak hours. And Jones Sausage Road connects to I-40 to neighborhoods, schools, and commercial industrial development further along Jones Sausage Road, and ultimately to other minor collectors such as East Garner Road and New Rand and Creech Roads. There was no TIA required because there was no site-specific plan for this proposal. However, we have provided some traffic counts for you here for some context. You can see that there's been a dramatic increase from 2011 to 2021. There was a neighborhood meeting held on March 30th of this year at the Garner Senior Center with 2 people in attendance, and the full neighborhood meeting information should be included in your packet. This project did come before you previously where the public hearing was first opened, so there were comments and questions about the future land use plan and plan consistency, the status of the local area plan with the Garner Economic Development Corporation and their opinion on this plan, the effect of the rezoning on neighboring properties, issues pertaining to the road network and road improvements, and conversation about potential signalization at the intersection. There were comments from the public regarding potential road widening along Tharrington Road, and comments from the chairman of GEDC regarding the plan for the greater area, noting that this area is called out as a backdoor to Garner in the CLUE plan. You all voted 5-0 to continue this hearing to a future date. Garner Economic Development Corporation did provide a statement of this regarding this project, so they were briefed a little bit at one of their previous meetings between the last hearing and now. And they have provided this statement that at the July 17th, 2023 Town Council public hearing, the Garner Economic Development Corporation, GEDC, expressed concern about the rezoning of Jones Sausage Assemblage due to the lack of information about the rezoning and the fact that GEDC was planning a land use and transportation study of a larger area, including the assemblage. Since that time, the GEDC has advanced its study and is close it to issuing a proceed order to a consultant team. Further, the GEDC has a better understanding of the rezoning request and a comfort level about working with the property owner during GEDC's study. The owner of Jones Sausage Assemblage will be invited as a member of the study and property owners and stakeholders committee. The GEDC understands the need for proceeding with the rezoning and has no objection. The next steps would be to send this meeting to Planning Commission for plan consistency before it returns to you for final action on reasonableness. So for tonight, staff recommends that once council has heard comments, concerns, and questions from the general public, that the case be referred to Planning Commission for their review. And the applicant is here to answer any questions, and they have prepared a few slides.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Harris. Let me see if council has any clarifying questions they want to ask. So I'll ask council this time, starting on my left, Mr. Singleton or Mr. Matthews. Anything from Ms. Harris?
Not at this time.
Okay. This way. Anything from Ms. Harris?
Just a question on the range of road improvements that would be required if the property were developed. I know there's a range of uses, so I'm sure some of that chain is different. And so kind of Jones Sausage improvements, Martin Branch. I know signalization is probably out of the question given its proximity to 40. So that gives me concern on high volume restaurant uses because it ends up looking like 40, 42 down there where you can't get out and being directly across from the speedway. So is there sort of an idea of what improvements would be required? And
So depending on what's proposed, they might be required to perform a TIA at that time. So it would be triggered by, I believe it's 100 peak hour trips or 1,000 daily trips. And so the ultimate recommendation would come from NCDOT at review at that time. I believe the Jones Sausage Road winding is currently happening, and then there would likely be curb, gutter, and sidewalk, at least on this side of the property, installed on the Barrington and Martin Branch frontage. There's anything else?
Yeah, and if the TIA is not required, there will be an encroachment permit required from DOT, so they would capture any improvements through that as well. But needless to say, all three streets, whatever they're deficient in, at the very least, would have to be brought up to standards.
And signalization would be sort of out of the question just because of its proximity to 40, more than likely.
We're not entirely sure about that. That, I think, is one of the things that the larger plan is taking a look at to see if that is possible.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Mr. Vance, anything? All right, thank you. This is a public hearing. I know we heard public testimony before. I guess we should hear if there's anyone who wants to do that tonight. Is that correct?
The applicant.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Yeah, Ms. Collier. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn, members of council. Toby Coleman, 150 Fayetteville Street in Raleigh, here on behalf of the owner. So this has been a case that's sort of bounced around a little bit, so I'm going to take some time just to explain it. I think many of y'all have been briefed to some extent on it, but forgive me, and certainly feel free to interrupt with questions. So the owner, the background of this rezoning is a little bit unique. And I'm going to go through and I'll explain it. But basically the owner is here asking, rather than asking for, saying, I've got a vision for this property, I want to rezone it for a vision. This is a case where when the owner purchased this property in 2022, it was all zoned commercial. All 2.76 acres was zoned commercial. And what happened, and I'll go through this in some detail, is that when council voted to approve the zoning remap back in July 2022 for some inexplicable reason that still is not clear. 0.17 acres of the assemblage was rezoned from commercial to residential 4. And so the entire purpose of this zoning, this rezoning request, is to correct that issue and to bring this entire property back to where it was prior to the remapping, prior to this error, and bring it into consistency with what the current comprehensive plan calls for, what the clue that you guys are probably, if you guys approve it tonight, will call for in terms of what this property should be used for, and also to bring it into consistency with the stated purposes of the small area plan for the Northeast Gateway that you all have been working with GEDC on. And that was part of some of the discussion back in July. So I'm going to discuss a few things. As I said, I'm going to discuss the origin and nature of the zoning error that we're seeking to correct, the impact of that zoning error, and why it's an issue. Why we're proposing to rezone the entire 2.78 acres assemblage instead of just 0.17 acres. That was a question that was asked, and I think fairly. And then update you. I think you've heard some of the updates from the GEDC, and so wanted to update you on that. Let's see here. So is this working, or do I need to give you? Okay. So here's the property, and this is the map as before the July 5th, 2022 townwide rezoning. Entire property was zoned commercial, community retail at the time. If you go to the next slide. So what should have happened, and this is according to town zone documents, according to the ordinance approving the remapping, was that, again, the town staff said there's no intent to downzone or upzone any property as part of this process. And that the ordinance also said that the official zoning map is being changed and everybody's moving to the most closely corresponding proposed base zoning overlay district. And you can see on that little graphic, that's again a town graphic, that what should have happened is all that property zone CR should have gone to commercial mixed use. If you go to the next slide. That didn't happen. So there you see, so it's not that appreciate what staff said, but it's not that my client is saying we have 2.58 acres of property that's currently zoned commercial. We want to, square the circle. We want to round off the edges. We want everything to be commercial. Rather, it is, for some reason, they had a commercially zoned property, and then for some reason on July 6, 2022, they all of a sudden had 0.17 acres that was zoned residential. And that was a problem because they want to sell the property. And they want to sell the property for commercial use. And when they took it out to market, they didn't realize that this had happened. And it came up in the context of a potential buyer doing due diligence. And they said, wait a minute, we're not going to buy this property unless you correct it. So why would that be a problem? If you go to the next slide. The problem is that 0.17 acres becomes potentially completely undevelopable. On through, the only private development permitted by right in the R4 district are single family homes or duplexes. There's some other civic uses, but that's really it. And according to the UDO, you have to have 1/4 of an acre to build a home or a building on R4 zone land. So on 0.17 acres, you can't do anything. So what my client did, if you go to the next slide, was not scream foul, was not file a lawsuit. Instead, they came to town staff and we said, we would like to get this corrected. Can you guys correct it quickly? And the discussion went back and forth. It became clear that a rezoning was probably the fastest way to do that. And so my client has been working with the town, and I've been working with the town to try to get this fixed since January. I will tell you, my owner preferred just to rezone the 0.17 acres. They said, why do we need to go through all this trouble? We've already got 2.5 acres zoned commercial. let's just rezone the stuff that was rezoned improperly. Let's do a general use rezoning, rezone it from R4 to CMX. Town staff said, no, we would recommend that you do a conditional use zoning for the entire property. Because it's in the Northeast Gateway, there are some specific concerns that we want you to address. My client agreed to do that, thinking that they were working with the town to cooperate on that. And so they proposed an initial set of zoning conditions that basically limited the uses. Town staff came back and said, this is in the Northeast Gateway, we'd like a sign, we'd like some additional language about landscaping. We offered all that. There are questions about, well, if this use, can you put in electric charging stations? Agreed to do that. There's questions about, well, if this is certain uses like a gas station, we have problems across the street with trucks idling as they're waiting to go back to the Amazon thing. So we said, okay, fine. If that happens, we'll put in this condition, we'll prevent that from happening. Again, not necessarily saying that's exactly what's going to happen, but just trying to address the entire scope for the entire assemblage. And so then we got here to y'all, in front of y'all in July. And so that's why I bring this background up, is just to make it really clear what happened. We got to you in July, and there was concerns. There's concerns that somehow this would negatively impact the Northeast Gateway Small Area Plan. The town was funding in part with the GEDC. The GEDC chair got up and expressed concerns. We're very grateful that they have put out a statement saying that they understand the need for proceeding and that they have no objections. Again, we thought that there shouldn't have been any objections to begin with, but we understand that everybody needs to do their research, so we appreciate that. If you could go to the next slide. Again, I want to note, this would bring the property into consistency with your own plans. So what happened in July was inconsistent with the existing plan, inconsistent with your current plan, inconsistent with the Northeast Gateway Small Area Plan that you guys are funding right now. And I went ahead and got the RFP. So the CLU plan says this area should be retail area. And for the Northeast Gateway, and this is sort of at the southern edge of the Northeast Gateway area that's being subject to the Small Area Plan, the primary goal of this plan is to develop a compelling case for landowners, developers, and other partners to participate in advancing Garner's commercial industrial base. That's what my client was trying to do. They're trying to basically move on, sell this land so it can be developed. And the priority is, according to the RFP put out for the Small Area Plan, the priority for land uses should be for uses that increase the tax base and create jobs that target Wake County average wage. Again, R4 zoning doesn't do that. We are trying to push forward, trying to support what the town is trying to do. We appreciate everything the town has done to work with us. And again, because there was a again, in part I do this because the statement from the GEDC was, well, we didn't have all the information. So I know this is probably more information than maybe you needed, but I felt it incumbent, given the unusual process here, given that we were put on indefinite hold back in July. I'm coming back to you. We haven't been to planning board. We haven't been released to go to planning board. I wanted to put all this information out there. So with that, I'm available for questions.
Sure. Sounds like you covered many of the issues and concerns in an explanation that council questions for Mr. Coleman. To my right, anybody? To my left, any questions? Okay, thank you very much, sir. Was the applicant planning to present anyone else? I assume that's, yeah, okay, thank you, sir. All right, anything else from you, Ms. Harris? Okay, anybody from the public came here this evening to speak to this issue? Okay, none. Council, you see the recommendation before you to refer this matter to the Planning Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of the motion, vote aye.
I have a
Excuse me,
comment.
okay, hold on just a minute.
Yeah, just for the record, on the July meeting, there were a lot of concerns voiced in July by GDC and the public and council that were completely justified and warranted. One of them was that the GDC had not been properly noticed on the rezoning. I just want that, and it also was presented to us as just an error correction and not a full-fledged rezoning. I just want that for the record. That's all.
Okay, thanks, Cheryl. All right, motion is still before you for the action now, so we were about to vote. So if you favor the motion, would you vote aye?
Aye.
Any opposition? There is none, and the matter will be referred to the Planning Commission for coming back to council. Thank you very much, Ms. Harris, for your time. Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Okay, we are now at item 3, public hearings, and this is the last public hearing on our agenda. Ms. Jones, it's my understanding that this matter for discussion and otherwise should be considered in conjunction with item 1 under new and old business. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what I'm requesting tonight, because the two items are intertwined.
Okay. So with that said, then, I'm going to open the public hearing, and I'll recognize Ms. Jones.
Try to pull up the presentation. Bear with me. So yes, we're here for the public hearing for the Walters Buffalo Development Agreement, the amendments, and also the spot mobility agreements, which have to do with the traffic signal to be installed at the Bryan Road and White Oak Road intersections. So give you a little bit of history on this. So the town has entered into a development agreement with Pulte Home Company. It was proposed as a condition of approval of their rezoning following public hearings last year in October and November. Both the rezoning and the development agreement were approved on November 22nd of last year. The document was executed so signed by all parties on December 19th and recorded with the Register of Deeds on December 30th of last year. Just to remind you, rezoning condition 22 was requiring the developer to widen and or restripe White Oak Road. That would provide the necessary road widening and lane improvements that would be necessary as required by the NC Department of Transportation in order to install a traffic signal at that White Oak and Bryan Road intersection. And at the time that the conditions for the rezoning were proposed, we did not have the development agreement fleshed out. That took several months to do. So again, the condition of approval was that they enter into a development agreement that covered the scope, the timing, the town's assistance with obtaining right-of-way, reimbursement or cost share, the obligations if the improvements could not be done, and then coordinating that traffic signal. And at the time that the rezoning was initiated, we did not know that we were going to receive the spot mobility grant from NCDOT, but we have received that, and as I mentioned, we will be asking you to approve the execution of that agreement with NCDOT, as well as a sub-agreement with Pulte to actually do the work for installing the traffic signal. So amendments were necessary for the development agreement. Probably the timeline as it was originally envisioned was overly optimistic about how long it would take to get certain plans approved. But basically in the amendments, there's revisions to the description of the corridor work. Most significantly, it's coordination with the Ball Rental project, which has also been approved by town council. updating the exhibits, extending the timing and milestones, and incorporating this associated spot mobility sub-agreement for the traffic signal. So just in a little more detail, the revisions to the corridor work paragraph are to provide revised conceptual plans in Exhibit G, and then specifically to call out the improvements that are needed for the ball rental project, for which that property owner has come to an agreement with Pulte on those improvements. In paragraph 4, the final cost, again, it's revising the preliminary budget, Exhibit H. It looks like there's an increase, but really that's incorporating the $680,000 grant that's part of the spot reimbursement agreement, and then $150,000 contribution from ball rental, which is offsetting what they would have been required to do for their project had it been a standalone project if this hadn't been going. But again, the final cost subject in the developer agreement, the development agreement, are really still at that $2.46 million. Paragraph 8 refers to the timing. Again, it's delaying the acquisition of easements and putting in a milestone to provide all the appraisals and offers and counteroffers to the town by January 31st, 2024. Before there was within so many days of certain approvals. So we're putting a date certain in that. In the corridor work, this is remaining the same. Pulte still has to complete all of the road widening and installation of the traffic signal prior to the town approving 120 lots. So they basically get 120 lots. This has not changed. They would have that amount of time and development of the Walters Buffalo project before they would have to complete the road widening and the installation of the traffic signal. And then for condemnation, you may recall that if they're unable to have the impacted property owners voluntarily accept their offer, then the town will file eminent domain cases so that we can secure the necessary right-of-way and easements. And that is basically being extended till March 1st of 2024. And then along with this, the big milestone of concern, both to council and to me, was that if right-of-way and easements were not acquired or condemned, in the original agreement, it was by December 31st of this year. The proposal is to extend that to June 30th of 2024. Then Pulte pays the town 35% of the cost estimate for the corridor work, and the town would have to complete the project. And then after completion of the corridor work, Pulte would pay any difference between the fee and lieu payment they make and 35% of the final cost. So if you go back to, we've put some more dates in here, and that gives plenty of time to be able to complete the condemnation process before a fee and lieu payment would be required or would be the alternative. So we've discussed this with Pulte. Staff has discussed this with Pulte, feels that these are more achievable deadlines based on the delay in getting some plans approved, and also that they're still getting appraisals done of the property that's needed for acquisition purposes. Again, Exhibit D has now been replaced with new milestone schedules. Many of the milestones in this, or dates have remained unchanged. It's just this getting to the acquisition, through the acquisition phase. Roadway construction and the traffic signal would need to be completed by November of 2025. This is actually a requirement of the spot mobility agreement with DOT. Originally, they had wanted it to be completed within a year, but given the timing delays that we've seen, I was able to negotiate 2 years with DOT. And the benefit to that is we make sure that we receive that money and we don't jeopardize that money from being part of the contribution to the signal. And then again, unchanged is that they would have to complete the improvements before plating of the 120th lot. The budget now references Exhibit H, and the corridor work, just to be clear, includes the installation of the traffic signal. So if for any reason DOT does not reimburse the full $680,000, that can then go into the total final cost and be attributed to contribution by all of the other corridor developers. So again, the exhibits, are basically several are replacing ones from the original agreement, and then the new one is the spot mobility sub-agreement. So again, Pulte will obtain the title certificates for the needed right-of-way and easements within 60 days of approval of the corridor work plans. The corridor work plans have been delayed to some extent because there were the ball rental project, and these plans were working in parallel, and they had to make sure that that both of the improvements can be made within the planned right-of-way. So that coordination took some time and was delayed. Pulte will also have to obtain appraisals and make offers based on the appraised value. This is the same language that was in the original agreement. And then if the property owners do not accept offers, then the town would file the condemnation actions. The reimbursement cost share, again, this is an impact area that's in the existing Exhibit E. The corridor fee payments are basically a proportional breakdown based on each future development's trip generation that would go through that intersection. So it's based on traffic studies. If there are not agreements between Pulte and these other developers, corridor developers, then the town would collect fee payments and remit those as reimbursements to Pulte for fronting the cost of the road improvements and the installation of the traffic signal. So again, Pulte is responsible to seek cost share agreements with the other corridor developers, and then they would pay a fee in lieu if the right-of-way and easements have not been acquired by June 30th of 2024. Again, the traffic signal will be at the White Oak and Bryan Road intersection. The spot mobility project did receive $680,000 in funding in October. That was, I believe, of last year, and subject to NC Board of Transportation approval at that time. That now has been secured. DOT is anxious for us to enter into that spot mobility agreement, and all of the installation cost covered by the spot mobility agreement would not be included in the final cost for the development agreement for the corridor improvements. And that's to make sure that there's no double dipping of, that everyone's assessed a fair percentage of the total cost. So again, with the spot mobility agreement, NCDOT will reimburse the town up to $680,000 for the traffic signal and associated road widening. This reimbursement is subject to state contracting requirements, and the work must be completed within 2 years. So the town's purchasing manager will assist to make sure that they complete the bidding for the contractor that's doing the traffic signal installation work, and any road improvements, that they are meeting those requirements so that none of that grant funding will be in jeopardy. And then the spot mobility sub-agreement, it does transfer the town's obligations under the DOT agreement to Pulte as our subcontractor. Any cost not reimbursed by DOT will be included in the final cost under the development agreement, and part of the corridor fee payments by other developers. And again, the town will assist Pulte in complying with those state contracting requirements. These are the same requirements that the town would have to do if we were installing the traffic signal ourselves. So far, the other corridor developers are Golden Trace. You approved their rezoning in February of last year with a condition that they enter into a cost share agreement with Pulte or pay a corridor fee to the town. As I mentioned earlier, Ball Rental has agreed to a $150,000 payment and dedicating right-of-way that's on their property. And then if you recall, Mahler's Creek was before you in September, and that decision was continued until these development agreement amendments were to be approved. Those are the three projects that are contributing at this time that have come before you for a decision. So the requested action tonight is to authorize the town manager to execute the addendum to the development agreement with Pulte Home Company, and then that would subsequently be recorded with the Register of Deeds. And then to also, as a separate action, authorize the town manager to execute the spot mobility agreement with NCDOT and the sub-agreement with the Pulte Home Company, LLC. I'm happy to answer any questions, and representatives of Pulte are also present.
Okay, council, we will move to any inquiries you have of our attorney. Mr. Matthews, anything?
No, quite a presentation. Looks like I know you've been working hard on this project to bring it about, and it was a good presentation. And other than that, I have no questions right now.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to my right, skip around a little bit to Mr. Vance.
Yes, my question pertains to will there be project status reports completed by Pulte so that we can know the status of if they're hitting their timelines or their milestones throughout the project, so we can be aware here as a town?
Yes, so as you had mentioned before, when you had continued or had discussed this prior, it asked for monthly reports. I envision that they'll be submitting them to me, and I can communicate them to council unless you want to bring them in to make a presentation, but I don't know that things will be moving. There'll be times when things are moving very quickly and there'll be a lot to report, and then there may be some months where there's not a whole lot to report.
Gotcha. I'm just concerned about key milestones that may, if there be a slip in the schedule and things of that nature, so that we can be aware the major things that be happening on the project, because there are a lot of moving parts here.
And I believe that Pulte committed to those monthly reports when they were here before you for the update.
Okay. Good.
Go back to Mr. Singleton.
So we feel comfortable, I won't say confident, but I'll say comfortable, with the June 30th deadline, because all the previous information that needed to be gathered and approved has taken place, and that's what was dragging it along to begin with. I think it was some information from the town and also the state, and once that got approved, then the process should go a little smoother, depending on the condemnation process.
So, I mean, I think part of the delay and the overly optimistic timeline that we had before was anticipating that the plans would be approved by NCDOT very quickly. That took some time and back and forth, and then this coordination with the Ball rental project kind of came in this summer, and that had to be, worked out with the lane configuration that they were anticipating for that particular project. So if Pulte is unable to acquire the right-of-way on their own on behalf of the town and the state, then I would need to file eminent domain actions. And in order to do that, and in compliance with NCDOT standards, we need appraisals. And so we don't have those appraisals yet. So with this timeline, the title work and the appraisals, which is the two important aspects that I need in order to file an eminent domain action, we'll have plenty of time before that June 30th deadline to get that done. Right now, it could be done, but it would not be very good cases to file with the 30-day letters. If I turned around tomorrow and filed a 30-day letter, I'd have to wait till December to file those condemnation cases. And that's really cutting it too close for December 31st.
Thank you for that.
Good. Okay. Ms. Berger, anything?
Yes, I appreciate all the work that's been done here. I know it took quite a bit of time and energy. I'm just going to state a personal opinion or personal feeling. I'm not happy with seeing that it's going to take 2 years to put that stoplight in, because that stoplight was needed 5 years ago. I understand the process, but try telling that to someone who's has a family member that loses a life there. You can't put a value on a child's life. You can't say, well, DOT was trying to get somebody else to pay for the stoplight. I know that this is a process, but it's we're not doing well in our responsibility to our community when we let something be extended and extended and extended that needed to be done a long time ago. If you're sitting at the intersection of Bryan Road and White Oak Road, there's 0 sight distance when you look south. The law says we're supposed to have, 150 feet that we can see? I'm not sure it's exactly that, but you can see nothing down there. And it's not the vegetation. It's because the road has not been designed correctly. So I'm glad that it's finally getting done, but it's sinfully overdue.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Behringer. Mr. Dellinger.
I do have some still questions about the fee in lieu and that deadline, or basically the out that they have. When I'm looking at the contract, in the definition of cost estimate, is a schedule of estimated cost to perform the corridor work based on a construction contract. But then when you go up to section 8.4, where is that? There's the statement, Pulte shall pay the town a fee in an amount equal to 35% of the cost estimated cost as shown in Exhibit H. So what we're going by is an estimate of a non-existent contract with a construction company. What also gives me concern is in September of 2022, they gave us a budget and the cost was $2.4 million. In October, they gave us a budget and it was $2.4 million. It's not gone up. I don't know where these the first cost estimates came from, but they've not been revised at all in a year. And I have concern that I don't know where those numbers came from. And if they decide they don't want to do what they need to do and pay their 35%, it's based off of numbers that I don't have a lot of confidence. I know ultimately 5-6 years down the road, there'll be a reconciliation. But I think that these estimates need to be updated and maybe done by the town or someone else that's impartial, because it doesn't make any sense to me that the budget is exactly the same 14 months later. None of our projects are the same 14 months later. So that gives me concern. I think the fee in lieu gives me concern at all. If Pulte wants to be a partner with the town, they should be a partner until the project is done. Right? Partnership is. Their initial timeline they'd be done with right-of-way acquisition in March 2023. That's what the first version said. Not even close. Do I have confidence about mid-year next year having certain done and Pulte not hightailing it out of here? I don't. Extending that date as far out as possible and cooperating as best we can on the right-of-way acquisition and condemnation if necessary. I mean, the right-of-way costs have not even gone up in this projected budget. That doesn't make any sense from what we've witnessed as a council on some of our own projects. I think we're close, but there's still some big concerns that I have with what we have right here in front of us tonight. A partnership should be a partnership to the end, is my opinion, but that's just me. That's all.
Okay. Any other council members want to comment on that? Mr. Dellinger says, you've heard him. I assume we're going to vote tonight as it relates to the matter at hand.
Well, he is correct. The number's the same. The one difference is the spot agreement money's added to that or taken away, and the ball money.
Yep.
So it's $830,000.
But every line item
It's the same.
It's the same.
I agree. That's a good point, and particularly with the issues with right-of-way that we're experiencing right down the road. An updated budget needs to be obtained, and sooner than later, because Mr. Dillinger's right. If you take 35% of an old number, then you're not getting the 35% of what may be the most up-to-date numbers. So I agree with that.
Other comments, observations? Who is here representing Pulte? Does anybody wish to speak? Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm David Farrell, attorney with Maynard, Nexon, and Raleigh, here representing Pulte. Certainly glad to answer any questions. We've gotten the title work done, the appraisals are coming in, so we're certainly sensitive to real estate values and things of that sort. So we'll be looking at those appraisals when they come in. But at this point, we don't know that we have enough information to modify the budget as it relates to the cost to acquire the property. And again, the estimate is being used to bid the project. That we'll have to go through the public bidding process, both for the original construction as well as the new signal. And so these numbers will help us go through that process. But again, until we go through that process, we don't have additional information or changes to the budget.
I guess that's my concern, is that that's how the cost estimate is established, by going through the process and getting the contract. Yet the fee in lieu is based off of a number I don't have a lot of confidence in, because it's the same as it was 14 months ago. And so my question, one, is how was it established in the first place? And then two, why hasn't it been updated as we've gone through this very long period of time to get to the revision?
Right. Well, the work that's shown on that outline, the scope of that work has not changed. And so I think there was a thought when we were going through the contract amendment process that we were allocating for the additional work for the signal, and then obviously the ball work that needs to be done. But at some point we will be able to, as we're putting this thing out for bid, look at whether there's been any changes. But we don't have any information right now that would lead us to believe that there needs to be changes to the budget. Certainly can understand the perspective of the passage of time, but it's not like we have information but then we collectively didn't include it in the amendment. We don't have information at this point that would lead us to amend that exhibit.
Yes, the concern is the fee that be collected as a fee in lieu is based off of that estimated number. Off the top of my head, it makes sense to increase all these line items by 35% or 40%. Again, just knowing what the prices are now to start, and then ultimately what the price will be in 5 years when the work's actually done and there are change orders and everything, all this stuff happens. This final price will probably be double what is here. That's from our experience on projects all over Garner.
Well, I will note that we've got a timeline based specifically on the spot mobility agreement that has a 2-year window. So we've got November 2025 as the completion date. So we're not anticipating a 5-year project. We're anticipating a project through November of 2025. But I guess I would just say that we would be concerned about making any lump sum or percentage adjustment to a budget without information from our own calculations that would show that that's necessary. I mean, Pulte's an experienced home builder. They've got systems that they use in order to develop real estimates. They don't want to develop estimates that aren't real. This was something they believed in when they proposed it. They don't have any reason tonight to believe that it should be anything different. But I think as we work through this process, if some alternations need to be made here, we're certainly glad to have a conversation with the town and the staff on it. But I would be hesitant to want to see any changes to the budget tonight, particularly based on just on a lump sum or a percentage versus actual, data and numbers. So I would ask respectfully that we not make any changes to the budget exhibit to the agreement.
Well, Mr. Farrell, guess what? We got a project right down the road, and I bet our attorney can show you how much the right-of-way has increased from September 22 until November 2023, and it's a substantial amount. And so that has got to be built into this. I mean, we're not talking about $50,000. There's more right of way for that project than this project, I believe is correct. But the amount of money that's been talked about is substantially higher than when we first started that project 3 or 4 years ago. Correct? Am I correct?
Yes, and part of that was I based estimates on the tax value and not appraised values of property. So using the appraisals not only meets the DOT standards, but also gives us a better frame to start with. But yes, in that project, we're dealing with a lot more property owners.
Mr. Singleton's point, this is just a theoretical budget that would be referenced if the fee in lieu were triggered. So if Pulte did everything it was supposed to do, this budget's not relevant. But as it being part of the contract and being stewards of tax dollar money, we need to put the town in the best position to finish the project and not leave money on the table if Pulte decides to exercise its fee in lieu.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Matthews, go right ahead.
I'm understanding where everybody's coming from here, and I'm trying to throw one of my old terms, some common sense in this process. Could we add another amendment to this process that we would, at that time, reevaluate all the line items and come up with that number that we're concerned about, so the town is in best interest, that Pulte would agree to, would review those numbers at that time and update that and put that in writing so the town would be protected and this project could move forward? Would that be something acceptable?
That and/or when they contract it out, get the contract for construction, use that number, which might be 6 months later, but then there could be a difference made up. So you get that estimate at that time, and then if there's a difference, they'd remit that difference. Does that make sense?
Yes, so one of the difficulties is they're not likely to bid it out until their site control and all of the easements and right-of-way are acquired. So what these changed milestones do is give the town more ability to get through an eminent domain case as necessary with the impacted property owners. And if you'll recall, those costs are shifted back to Pulte, the cost of outside counsel, the cost of going through that process would become part of the final cost. So the town, by being able to secure the right-of-way and easements necessary, basically the fee in lieu could become a moot point because we now have time to complete that process now that we believe they're very close to the plans being approved.
And I agree. I think it could be a moot point, but in the event that it's not, we want to make sure we're securing as much funding as possible to move forward with the project and not to wait until the project's done to get an actual final cost. So that's what I'm saying. Not sure what the right solution is, but I think just increasing that budget number, maybe pushing that timeline out a little bit more, put this in a safer position.
I think we're all around it here. We just got to find a way to put this together between us here.
Unfortunately, the town engineer's not here tonight, but I mean, the only thing I can think of is to have a cost estimator do something, but again, we wouldn't have actual like construction bid documents to base it on. But if Pulte is willing to do that at say April 1st or something like that, we get closer to it. That's what I'm off the top of my head right now.
Well, I guess I would, if I may, just comment further. This is a date that's in there because Pulte is kind of at the mercy of the town related to the acquisition of the easement. So the way it's drafted is it's only if the title to the land or the easements necessary to complete the project have not been acquired by a certain date. And so what we did was really, I think, to help bring certainty to this is we put in threshold dates that were going to be met, because before there was no dates. It said within a certain number of days from certain approvals. So we now have a timeline that puts us in a position that to have the right-of-way needed by that date. And if that is the case, then there is no voluntary exercise by Pulte to say we're just going to walk. So, I think because of the way we've amended this agreement, we've lessened the likelihood that this could even be exercised. And then we're also not recognizing the fact that if we get up to that date and we're all working together, Pulte wants to continue to do business in this town. They're going to work with the town to, if there's some situation. But the problem we've got with just extending this deadline is this deadline was picked because it is a certain amount after the acquisition of the easements, and it's also the month after the permit approvals from DOT. So we now have some other factors that are now outside of our and the town's control. We have DOT approvals, and so this was a date that we felt like was a safe date so that everything that could happen, but if it doesn't, this stays in here. So I guess I, again, would say that because of the nature of when this would be triggered and that it's pushed out far enough to let everything occur, that we would respectfully request that we approve this, move forward, and we'll commit to working with the town if we get to the point where it even becomes in the conversation that this is a date that needs to be discussed.
I think the frustration is that there'd been a lack of responsiveness from Pulte throughout this year. So we're not going to take on good faith that that's going to continue. We want to have something in place. And I understand that the later date, everything could go great and it could work perfectly and we'd all be happy. But in the event we get to that date and it's not done, we have to be in a position to have more accurate cost estimates, and which would then result in probably a larger amount due up front. And again, it all gets reconciled at the end, but we don't want to be waiting 3 to 4 years to make that reconciliation when we have to come up with the money to finish the project. That's our responsibility if Pulte pulls out. So, and again, if it's only 5% chance that's happening, then there should be even less concern for us adjusting these numbers because it's probably not going to happen, right?
Right. And if I might, I would also like to comment that there is a subparagraph under 8.4 that essentially allows for an additional calculation to be made and Pulte to pay an additional sum if the fee in lieu payment is exercised and the project has to be completed by another contractor. It says that Pulte shall be responsible for payment to the town of the difference between the fee in lieu and 35% of the final cost. So I believe we've already built in kind of a safety valve that you may be concerned about. But even if we haven't, we would like, again, to respectfully say that we think that the contract has the right deadlines and the right performance mechanisms for Pulte to comply with the contract and to perform the project.
Let me ask a quick question. Maybe it's implied, but where does the Department of Transportation fit into this mix? If we're struggling here with the issues that we're discussing now, are they still on board with what they expect to eventually do here?
I'll speak to what I understand and then would ask the town attorney to speak because she's had more direct conversations. But DOT has proposed for the town to sign a spot mobility agreement. Pulte would be signing a sub-agreement, essentially stepping into the town's shoes for most all of the requirements under that agreement to construct this signal. So DOT, I believe, is on board for us to execute these agreements and move forward. And we have a 2-year window from the signing of the contract to complete the signal work. And if we meet certain thresholds, then there could be reimbursements that would flow through the town. So my understanding is DOT is in favor of this relationship and this arrangement and has proposed contracts that would execute that.
That's correct. And DOT has been wanting us to execute this spot agreement since the summer. However, without working out the details with Pulte's part of this 3-way kind of reimbursement, I was uncomfortable having you execute that and not have the sub-agreement in place. We are, both of us, at the mercy of DOT and getting certain approvals, as plans are submitted to them and getting those back. So that's still something we don't have control over in the timeline.
Well, you both heard Councilmember Behringer's reasonable concern, I think, about a intersection that needs some attention. That has to factor in this somewhere along the way.
Question.
Go ahead.
Under 8.5, it talks about the preliminary milestone schedule, and Ms. Jones just mentioned that it would be very hard to get the right-of-way and easement acquisition done between now and the end of December, because we're talking with the holidays about 5 to 6 weeks at best. So already the schedule is going to be behind. Take the fact that the schedule will already be behind. So, and submit revised design, that may happen on time, I'm not aware of that, but the right-of-way and easement acquisition, chances of it happening are not going, by the end of December will not take place. So the schedules would already be behind, correct? Because you've got to get appraised and so forth and so on. And I know it's not a whole lot of property owners, but there still are property owners that are to be affected.
I believe, if I might, the schedule has actually, we're still on schedule based on the revised schedule and the agreement. We have performed, the title work is in, the appraisals have just come in, they're being reviewed internally. I believe we have until the end of January 2024 to submit to the town the offers and the responses that we've received in any of our efforts to try to acquire the easements. And then the town has, I believe, until March 1st to file whatever condemnation actions may be necessary. So we are on schedule. In fact, we were just speaking in the back of the room that the hope is to have offers going out by the end of the month so that conversations could occur before we get to the holidays, recognizing that we've still got time if they spill over into 2024, January 2024, to try to conclude whatever conversations are going on with the landowners before we kind of turn over the package to the town.
But based off that, the right-of-way will not be acquired by the end of December. That's just what the towns will get stuff by the end of December, by end of January, then it hopes to file whatever needs to be filed by March the 1st. So I'm just stating, it's this complete right-of-way and easement acquisition, and that's not going to take place by the end of December. That's all I'm pointing out, but you have updated the schedule for me, so I appreciate you telling me that.
Right, and it may be that it's the revised paragraph 8.4 or 8.5 that has the new language, but I believe we are now, if you're looking at Exhibit I, that's the new schedule, and that's the schedule that we believe we're going to be able to meet. And again, as I think it was stated earlier, part of the delay was having to work this new ball property into the new design, and so that had to be redesigned and kind of delayed things a little bit.
Okay, all righty, thank you.
So, Ms. Jones, could I ask you, so if the council decides not to vote on this action and proceed, where does that leave us?
Do not vote tonight, or
yes,
leaves me in a world of pain.
But
also it would be expensive because we're going to have to get outside counsel to file condemnation cases without perhaps good appraisal. Well, I think the appraisals are done, but it will be more expensive for everyone, and we have to make sure that we can meet that deadline. Because my understanding from council is the town doesn't want to take over this whole project. We appreciate that Pulte is taking the lead on getting this roadway improvements and the signal to be able to be installed. If we would have to take over the project, I don't think we're going to get it done any quicker than they're doing in their timeline.
Well, I think the thing that Mr. Dillinger mentioned, and I would like also, is somewhere, you said maybe around April, can we get an updated budget, cost estimate or whoever, can we get an updated budget so we can have updated numbers and feel more comfortable about if everything falls apart to 35% and so forth and so on? Can we get that inserted or agreed upon here tonight and insert that somewhere in the schedule?
My only concern is I don't know what numbers will be available to us in April. I think I would need to talk to the internal Pulte accountants and construction folks to know what numbers we would have in April. I mean, presumably, we're either going to, by April 1st, we're either going to have acquired easements or we're going to, the town will have filed condemnation actions and deposited the estimate of just compensation with the clerk. So we'll certainly know whether there's any changes to the right-of-way budget by then. And so I guess I'm just trying to walk through the details. So presumably we would be able to have more updated numbers by April as it relates to right-of-way. What I don't know, and if there's any, if we've got, Rob, if you have any details on that, but we'll be going through the permit process. I think the permits don't have to be granted, which presumably would be either from the town or from DOT until April, and then other permits would be obtained by May. So I don't know whether to the extent in the permit process anything would change that might impact the construction either. So those, I don't think we have any problem reevaluating and looking to see if there's been some substantial change in the budget one way or the other. I just don't know that I can commit to a date tonight without more information about when numbers would be available. But I'm not trying to be evasive. I just don't know personally what information will be available in April and whether it will be complete.
That's sort of why I make the recommendation. Let's just bump those line items up 30%. There we go. And if everything goes according to schedule, then it won't ever be exercised because it's a fee in lieu. But again, that's what we're on the hook on this budget that hasn't changed. And if you can't, Pulte being Pulte, this multi-billion-dollar company, they can't get construction estimates on a road project until April. That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But I think we need to update that budget somehow. And I mean, I would actually just like to get rid of the fee in lieu completely, and Pulte can finish the project. That's kind of where I stand. But in lieu of that, we need to get those budget numbers up so that we're not left in the short term holding a larger portion of the responsibility fiscally than we need to or have to.
We're going to let this gentleman speak since he came. If you'll state your name and address, please, sir.
Sure. My name's Rob Rudloff. I'm with Pulte Homes. My home address is 108 Brownsville Court, and it's in Holly Springs.
Thank you.
Yep. So, with regards to, budgeting, construction numbers, we're using a very conceptual plan when we obviously originally came up with the numbers, the budget numbers for the project, but, we were obviously trying to be as accurate as we thought or as we could be with the information we had at the time. I think maybe come April, we'll be further in design development. That may be a good time to reconvene, but I think I'm still a little unclear on how or who or what I guess what the process would look like for doing that if we were gonna update the numbers at a later date. Maybe a reasonable solution would be to have an engineer, engineer's opinion of probable costs or something like that.
So what we're looking at now are estimates based upon function of conceptual designs.
Yes.
And you submitted right-of-way designs, which were more defined designs.
Yes.
Okay, so you can get a better estimate with right-of-way designs.
Yeah, but we're in the process now, and that's part of the change scope with the Doug Ball property. We have a even further revised design that we're hoping to submit, later this month. That adds, the additional pavement, things like that we worked with Doug Ball to come up with his fair share of those costs. So.
Okay, so with the right-of-way plans, you'll be able to get closer to the actual estimate that you have based upon more refined plans.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
Yes, and then now in April, you're looking for DOT approval, which means that you're going to have designs ready to go to construction, which are even more refined than the right-of-way plans.
Sure.
So you should be able to provide something there for cost estimate, because you're going to need it for your pavement designs and everything else.
Yeah, at that point, I think we could certainly, update costs. I mean, whether that's working with the contractor, I just don't know how the town would like to see that take place. Right? And, yeah.
It's, just from a timeline standpoint, I mean, we've got public bid process in August of 2024, awarding the contract in September 2024. So we're going to have our plans approved in April, May timeframe, obtain permits, and then we have to complete the bid process and award the contract in the August, September timeframe. That's the current timeline.
But there should be a way, I'm thinking there should be a way of getting an estimate based upon the refined plans that you have, a closer one to the actual estimate. As you go, as your plans get more and more refined, you get closer and closer to the actual estimate.
Yeah, and I think we're happy to do that at any time along, any step in the process. We're happy to revisit that and look at that. I just, I don't know when that's appropriate, I guess.
Actually, I don't know, Mr. Vance is a retired DOT engineer. So he knows how this process works, so just thought it might be neat to point that out.
Right. I think he's brought up a good point, Mr. Vance has, and Mr. Singleton, that in that April window, apparently you're going to have certain things you'll have a handle on. That's what I'm hearing you say. I think that's what we're asking for here, to bring to us what you have and update it at that point. I think that'll give us a better feeling where we're at here. So
April may be a little soon. Okay, we'll give it to us sometime by June 1st. So we can update the budget, and that can apply to what we're talking about.
Well, I think the operative issue is the number. And if we can push that fee in lieu date past to where they're actually going to have a construction estimate and contract, then we'll know what that number is. If, having the fee in lieu occur before you have that estimate and you're getting that contract leaves you in that ambivalent space where you don't know what that number is. If we push that date out further, then we alleviate a lot of the problem, because that uncertainty of this goes away, because we'll have a firm number and a firm budget, and that's what we could work from. So I think moving that July date to even December of next year gives time for all kinds of things. I mean, Mr. Single made the point, the milestones on this are already done. It says December 2023, and you said, well, we'll do it in December, and it may trickle into January, so it's already shifted. So if we can move that fee in lieu date to the end of next year, it gives us all the time in the world to get all the pieces together. We don't need to be under time pressure, because right now that date is supposed to be December 31st, and we're not going to meet that. So why not we not repeat the same conundrum again and just push that date out to the end of next year, and we can work together all year next year to keep the project moving forward, work with DOT, any hitches in acquisition, or I think it keeps us in sync versus worrying about other deadlines and operating under pressure like we are now to revise this agreement.
So, council, what tonight that you that will keep this process on track? It's certainly in the town's interest to move this forward, in my opinion.
I'll agree, and I think just what Mr. Dellner just said is all that needs to take place is that I think we'll agree on both the spot mobility agreement and this. It will just change the fee in lieu date from June 30th to a later date. And that way you'll have an updated budget. Y'all won't rush because telling you to give us a number in April, I understand that's not right either. And just push it back. And then we got the right number, and the right number will be inserted there, and that fee in lieu will fall in place. That's all we need to change, is the fee in lieu of date needs to be extended later into 2024.
I would agree to that too. I think it take everything off the table.
Well, Ms. Attorney, I want to keep within the confines of their public hearing. I'm wondering, should I see if there's anybody else here who wants to address this matter from the public?
I believe there was someone who did sign up.
Let me mention one thing, though. When the spot mobility agreement is agreed upon, that's the 2-year window, right? Yes. Right, so if we agree upon it tonight, pushing that date back does not change anything as far as the construction schedule.
It doesn't-
No, the
nope.
spot mobility agreement's agreed upon tonight, it kicks in tonight or tomorrow, whenever it kicks in, you got 2 years, if that's correct. Okay. Yeah, so that doesn't change anything with the schedule, it just allows them to give us an estimate or an updated budget later in the next year. We don't force them to come here on April 1st and they don't have updated numbers, that puts them in a bind, and we're not solving anything by doing that.
Change the references in section 8.4 to whatever future cost estimate actual cost estimate they get from a contractor versus referencing this exhibit H, right? So, because that gives us the firm numbers, the firm cost estimate, and not the estimate of the estimate.
I'll go back. I'm going to recognize anybody in the audience who came with the express purpose of wanting to speak here this evening. I don't think there's anybody. Maybe there is. Okay, come on forward.
The mayor, here's one comment.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I think that Pulte was getting ready to respond to what was said before this happened, but before this young lady stepped up. I think.
Does Pulte want to respond now before we recognize this?
We can wait till after she speaks.
Okay.
It's fine.
All right.
Yeah.
Come on up.
My name's Allison Lee. I live at 200 Lee Farm Lane, Garner. I just had a couple of questions. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask Pulte questions, but I also have questions just for the town attorney. My first two questions are for Pulte, if I'm allowed to ask them anything. I've called a couple of times over the last 11 and a half months since we were here on November 22nd of last year talking about this. And my question is, have all of the landowners been, have they been contacted in the last 11 and a half months?
Which landowners?
What you're trying to get the easements for? Okay, so when we stood here, 350 days ago, it was not going to be a problem. We had a timeline that was as aggressive as it is now. We're going to reach out to them. The right-of-way is going to be done by this. We're standing here almost a year later, and they still haven't even contacted everybody. I know I travel that road 5 times a day. Nobody knows more how much we need that stoplight than I do. I have seen so many wrecks. I have seen parts of cars on the side of the road. And even though I am in the ETJ and I don't pay Garner taxes as a resident, we can't use the fact that we need this as an excuse to be taken advantage of. And I mean that very factually. You know, it's been almost a year and they stood right here and said they could get it done. And now they're standing right here again and they're saying they can get it done. My question is, when did the Ball property come into the equation? Do you remember just a month, a season of this year?
There was no original coordination between the two projects, so a lot of the time that's been lost in the last year has been the town trying to get the two parties together. So right. I'm not saying that not everyone hasn't done everything they could, but their two projects were moving parallel and not integrated together.
But when did the Ball property come into this situation?
Earlier this year sometime.
Like January or like May?
I don't remember, Ms. Lee. We've been working for months with all the parties trying to get them all together.
The reason I'm asking is because we worked on this development agreement with the town and with the council for months before it was even approved in November of 2022. So to think that the town could have possibly been working on these parallelly, or whatever the word is, for the last, year and a half? And it's caused a whole year delay.
Well, it was actually a lack of coordination at the NC.DOT. So so the lack of coordination was because with DOT that we've been trying to help them overcome. Yeah. And that's where a lot of our time really came into play, was trying to get DOT to look at the plans together.
Okay. There's been a lot of things that have been talked about. What happens if there's, in section 8.1, what happens if there's no good faith effort? I'm being genuine, but the reason I say that and the reason I bring up the good faith effort is because we are standing here 11 and a half months after we stood here last year And we talked about good faith effort. And we said, what is going to be a good faith effort? And Pulte just told us that over the last almost 12 months, they still haven't even contacted all the landowners. And we're not talking about 10 landowners. We're not talking about 50 landowners. We're talking about a handful of landowners. So again, what happens if they don't show good faith? Because they haven't shown us good faith yet. You want me to tell you what they have shown good faith of? They're not worried about this. They've cleared their land. They've burnt the trees. They've graded. They've done everything they can with every permit that they've got from the town. They've even hauled debris from other sites in Raleigh over to the site in Garner and burned it on burn ban days. See, the things that they make money off of, they're going. They got their good faith. They're moving forward with that. But in almost a year, they haven't reached out to a handful of owners, and we need this light. But it's not the town of Garner that has the issue here. We're chasing a developer to help us pay for this. I would respectfully ask that 8.4 be stricken. If I go and I buy a car and I sign a contract, if I miss my payments, if I don't pay 100%, they come and take the car. If I sign a contract for my house and I don't pay 100%, not 99.9, if I don't pay 100%, they come and they take my house. I know that we need this light, and Council Member Gray sat here last year and said, I don't care what it takes, we need this light. We're getting to a point where we are putting our town in jeopardy. Our tax rate 3 years ago was, I'm sorry, I moved my page. It was 49.71 cents for fiscal year 2020 to 2021. For fiscal year 2023 to 2024, this is a 3-year difference, is 62.70%. 62.70 cents. That is a 26% increase in tax. 26%. Not 2, not 6, not even 10. 26% in 3 years. This town cannot afford for them to default on this thing. The town cannot afford to pay for this stoplight, no matter how many lives it saves, no matter how much we need it. We can't afford it, but we can't let them hold us over a barrel because of that. We say, oh, they're committed. They're committed. If they're committed, take out 8.4. Let's see how committed they are. They're committed to clear that land. They're committed to sell those houses. They've been over there for months. When they haven't been talking to the town, they've been making sure they're getting their development done. I can tell you that. I smell the smoke. It's at my house. It's part of it. No, we need it. We cannot sacrifice the fiscal responsibility and the fiscal health of this town. There is nobody that 8.4 benefits more than Pulte. There's not even another person it does benefit. If they are standing here and they have good faith and they're committed and they're going to stick it out and they're going to do it, why is 8.4 in there? And the next development agreement that comes along, don't you think they're going to want to have an 8.4? How many is it going to take to put the town under? They don't have anything holding them on. They're a multi-million-dollar company. What's 35%? You got to think about what that other percent, what that 65% would do to the town of Garner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Point out something, Ms. Lee, about the schedule, and it is long. The roundabout that was supposed to be at Ackerman and White Oak that the town's doing was supposed to be finished about 2 years ago. It's coming from 2013 bond dollars. So these projects just are pains in the butt. And Jones Sausage Road, which we thought was going to open in 2024, is it 2026? If we see that. So it is slow. Ms. Behrens is right. We need the light 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and it's god awful. It's painfully slow. There's no question about it. You're right. It's painful, slow. That's just working in government sometimes is painfully slow. We all up here know that. Staff knows it too.
I don't know that taking a break would help anything, but I'm wanting to move us somewhere on this particular issue. We've debated it and discussed it. Appreciate Ms. Lee's comments. I'll hear from you, sir.
I just wanted
Mr.
to
Farrell.
make a couple of comments. Again, just to put the fee in lieu in context, the town controls whether that ever gets to be exercised. So if the easements in the right-of-way are acquired by the date in the original agreement or the date on June 30 of 2024, Pulte cannot exercise the fee in lieu. It's only if the easements are not acquired, and that's necessary because there's some tight timelines with DOT approvals and other things and requirements to complete in a certain timeline. We've got to keep this on schedule, and that's just a provision that, again, gives Pulte some level of comfort that this is going to proceed in a timely fashion. So, again, the town, if the acquisition of easements occurs, that doesn't ever even get reached. But to try to hear the concerns and appreciate that when DOT approves and we've got our approvals, we will have plans that will give us a more accurate description of this revised project because the project has been revised. So what we would propose is, since that timeline sets around April 2024, that we will get our engineer to do a revision or revised budget estimate that would be the one that would go out to the contractors, because at that point we don't have a contractor. We have engineers that do this for us. We will get a revised budget, submit that to the town, and we would propose that we would extend the fee in lieu date from June 30 to August 31st, because that would give us time to evaluate the revised budget and make any changes that are necessary. But we certainly believe that as a practical matter, based on the dates we've now inserted into this agreement in other sections, that we're never going to reach it because we're going to have the right-of-way we need because of the timeline. So we think that's a fair compromise to what the concerns we've heard, which are fair, legitimate concerns, and we're trying to address them. But we've also got, there's a reference to signing a spot mobility agreement tonight. That starts a 2-year timeline. And so we're concerned with pushing the right-of-way acquisition out to the end of the year because that's what this is tied to. The fee in lieu is tied to acquisition of right-of-way. And so that's why that's an important timeline. And we've actually, we believe, extended it 6 months, which we think is reasonable. In fact, we only extended the permit dates 4 months from the original timeline. So we think we were being reasonable in 6 months. We've heard the concerns. We're glad to go another 2 months, but we would be concerned with going any further beyond that, just given the overall scope of the project and the timelines that we're trying to keep. We are trying to get this completed and built in 2 years. I know there's difficulties with that, but that's our plan.
Okay.
You mentioned that it would never happen. You would never hit that date.
If the right-of-way is acquired.
But if not, but you said never. You're like, and that's, again, we have to be concerned with.
Yeah.
Things happen, and you say the town is in control. Well, there are parts of that process that the town is not in control of. It may be our responsibility, but that doesn't put us fully in control, right? There's a difference. And so if it's never going to happen, let's go with the August deadline and Pulte pays 75%. But right, all of a sudden it might happen.
The point I was trying to make, and maybe I didn't make it clearly, is if the town acquires the right-of-way by the date in the agreement, which we believe the timeline gives more than ample time to do, that the fee in lieu payment is never triggered based on the language. So if the right-of-way is acquired, if it's not, then I agree with you, the fee in lieu could be triggered if Pulte decides not to renegotiate with the town and go through the same kind of process that we just went through. Things changed on this project. We were asked to add a ball component. We were asked to take the plans from DOT and then implement the traffic signal. So things changed. We worked with the town staff and worked to make sure we were setting a timeline that they could meet, that we could meet for approvals and we're moving forward. So, again, I appreciate that there may be some trepidation because there's been some delay, but, again, we believe that this schedule puts us on track to build this project the way we intend.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
So when exactly, with the revised budget that will apply, would take place sometime in June, May or June?
Well, my thought was we've got April 2024 for receiving our plan approvals from the town and NC.DOT. So let's just assume it's April 30th. Within 30 days, we would have our engineer redo the budget based on the revised plans, submit that to the town, and then we would extend the June 30th fee in lieu date by 2 months to give us time to have that reviewed and come up with some way to address it, if whether it's an amendment or whatever it is.
Make sure you talk to these ladies here who own property that you need to talk to right to your right and turn around.
Will do.
Ms. Jones, in your opinion, we probably need to take a break anyway. Is there any issues that you and Pulte can discuss during a brief break that would, I guess, help the council to decide what a final motion is going to come out of this action tonight?
I think what you're looking is, we talked about the August 31st date.
Yeah.
We just want to make sure something that what Mr. Farrell said about getting us the updated cost, whether that's by June 1st or whatever, if it has to be a date, but after they receive the information and submit it to the town, that there'll be an updated budget process, and then we can make an amendment if we need to in regards on the budget, and then insert that into the schedule. Y'all need, we can take a break and y'all can get that language right, or am I in left field here, or what? Y'all talk to me down there on the right side. Y'all talk to me down there.
I just look at last year, and I remember we almost sat up here and had a very similar conversation. And I remember recommending a longer fee in lieu date, and an attorney, it wasn't you, stood up there and said, oh, we can't do that. We can't do that. It's not possible. And Mr. Singleton then recommended 3 months earlier, and they were like, yeah, we can do that. And I think we're in the same situation again, where it's like, well, we'll give you 2 months. No, do it a whole year. Give it a whole year. The spot process is driving the timeline now. That's what's driving the timeline for us, for you, for DOT. That's driving the timeline, not this fee in lieu. And I don't want to give Pulte the opportunity to step away from this project prematurely, and definitely not prematurely with budget numbers that aren't real. And if we can get through the whole next year, get that contract awarded like it's supposed to on the schedule by August, if we pushed it in December, we're in the throes of the project, and we're all working together. Things are moving right along, and there's nothing to worry about because we don't have to worry about fee in lieu because we'll be done with all the acquisition. So I'm not understanding why you're so afraid of extending it to the 31st when it doesn't have, moving that date has no impact on the timeline of this project. Town's going to move as fast as it can, I guarantee you. We are. DOT is going to make us, and we're going to work with them. So I'm having a hard time understanding the trepidation Pulte has with working with the town.
It's not that we have any trepidation working with the town. It's that the project is not necessarily driven wholly by the spot mobility agreement. It's driven by when we have the right to begin construction, and we don't have the right to begin until we have the right-of-way. So the fee in lieu payment is tied to the acquisition of right-of-way. So until you have the right-of-way, you can't start, and you can't go on and do the testing and all that. So that's why it has to be the earlier, not the end of the year, because if we can't go on the property to January 1, 2025, what we've lost a substantial amount of time to potentially do work, site work, otherwise get ready for the construction of the project. So that's the concern we've got, is that it's tied to, the fee in lieu is tied solely to acquisition of right-of-way. It's not tied to permitting. It's not tied to DOT. It's tied to acquisition of right-of-way because that's what allows us to start the project. We've put a timeline in place in this revised agreement based on this change in scope. We've brought in some other properties, so we had to reevaluate the design and what landowners may be impacted. Now we have a clear path forward on the right-of-way acquisition so that it would occur before, we believe, the fee and lieu date of June 30. We're certainly glad, trying to work with the town to extend that, since there is a concern about making sure the budget is updated. We'll work on that, and I think we can work on something on the break to try to address that. But that's the concern with pushing it too far, is it's tied, the fee and lieu is tied to acquisition of the right to enter the property to begin the work. So thank you for that.
So do you think you and Ms. Jones might be able to discuss this matter during a short break, or do we need more time than that to come back and present to the council something that this council apparently desires to hear and can move ahead with?
I would like the opportunity to work with the town attorney during the short break to see if we can come up with a few changes to the addendum that would be acceptable.
Okay. We've tried that method in the past, and it's worked fairly well on some occasions, but council, what say you?
That sounds good, and we need to have a recess for 10 to 12 minutes.
Okay, I will give it 15 minutes. We'll take a recess and come back at quarter of, what is that, 9? So
Thank you.
I declare recess.
Not quite quarter to 9, anyway, yeah.
That's cool. I'm going to call the council back in session, and with the explanation that the matter that was being discussed is still under discussion with our attorney and others. So we're going to keep that matter open, and we'll come back to it when they're ready. In the meantime, we're going to go to other items on the agenda that can probably be dealt with fairly quickly, but to make better use of our time rather than continue to wait. That's what we will do at this time. So I'm at the place on the agenda where if there are any committee reports, now would be a time to hear from that.
Need to continue that first.
Yes.
We move that we continue the current hearing to later on in the current meeting.
Okay, yeah, one more motion. If you favor that motion, would you vote aye?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous and agreed. So, okay, now we will go to the latter portion of our agenda. I don't believe there are any committee reports this evening. Is that right? Okay. We'll go to manager reports, and I recognize Mr. Dickerson.
Council and Mayor Marshburn, we have a couple of events to recognize. First, the Veterans Day observance. That celebration will be on November 11th, which is Saturday, from 10:30 to noon at the Avisboro Baptist Church. And along with that, there will be tours of the Veterans Memorial at Lake Benson Park. Those will be given following the program. In addition, for Veterans Recognition Month, we are lighting the building green, this facility. So if you drive by at night and you see the uplighting of green, that's a program that various entities throughout Wake County are doing to recognize veterans. So we are going to participate in that this year, just as we did last year. And we got a lot of good comments from that. Mm-hmm. Next, there's auditions for the 2024 Garner Showcase of Talent. That will be held on Wednesday, November 15th at 5 p.m. at the Garner Performing Arts Center. And they will have auditions for just local talent. A lot of times we get a lot of folks from within the town, and you don't know how much talent is here until you see it at some of these type of events. And it's always been very successful. So they will have auditions and pick finalists that will perform in the actual showcase, I think, in the spring, I believe, when it is. So just want to let you know those few things.
Okay, thanks, sir. Any questions for the town manager? Okay. Hope to see many of you as can make it to the Veterans Day. It's always usually a well-attended and a good service. We have a very outstanding keynote speakers, I understand it. All right, since our attorney is engaged, we will forego reports. Council reports, why don't I start with Phil on my left?
Mr. Mayor, I was just going to highlight the Veterans Day, and the town manager's already done it so eloquently. And but encourage everybody to come out because, as you said, it's a great opportunity. Be great music and, of course, recognition of all the veterans from all the wars there. And occasionally, last year we had two from World War II. I believe one fought at the Battle of the Bulge. I got a chance to talk to him. And being a Vietnam vet, we're starting to age into that category now and thinning out. So if you get an opportunity to see a World War II or Korean vet, get your picture made with them. It's something else, and they do have a story to tell. And but it's a great time, and I'm so pleased just to tag onto that again we are a Purple Heart community, and which is I appreciate the council jumping on that a work session a couple of years ago. We did that in record time. And we will have that sign replaced at the park. It got somehow accidentally run into, and it'll be up for Veterans Day out there. So we're going to put it in a different location, the Purple Heart sign. So, but we do have a lot of veterans in Garner, so those that are watching, if you know anybody, invite them out. It's a good time to get together and talk. And we really appreciate the town taking the lead on that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Matthews. I recognize Mr. Singleton.
Yes, I know that the item was removed from this agenda and added to the November 21st agenda. And are we going to be able to start that meeting an hour earlier? Is that possible to start at 5 p.m.? So, because we have a very long agenda. Okay, so that meeting will start at 5 p.m. on November 21st.
I'll advertise it that way.
Ma'am?
I'll advertise it that way.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, everybody's okay with that too because of the length of the agenda.
Thumbs
Okay.
up? Okay.
Thank
All right.
you, and
Good.
as the mayor mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, tomorrow's election day. Encourage people to go out and vote early and vote often. And who said that?
Mr.
Mr. Johns.
Yeah, probably. He sat right there where you're
Yes,
sitting.
right there, we'll say.
Okay. All right.
A questions to Stella. Do we still need to get here an hour early for our usual thing on that? Is that going to happen on that date? Okay.
Get here at 4 o'clock for the meal, I
Yeah.
guess. If you. Okay, thank you, Ms. Singleton. Ms. Behringer.
Yes, in reference to associated with what Mr. Matthews said, I will not be at the Veterans Day event. I'm out of town this weekend, but I had the opportunity to talk to a Purple Heart recipient at the gas station last week. He was an older man and was having difficulty walking around. And but I saw on his license plate the Purple Heart, so I got out of my car and asked him, and he had served in Vietnam as well. And so privileged to be able to thank him for what he had done.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Dellinger?
Yes. Someone brought to my attention, and I did not inspect it myself, but that at the Hebron Church, White Oak, there are some bad dips or sharp drop-offs or something at that intersection. I know that's DOT, but if we could have someone look and see if there's anything that needs to be done there. I also was able to attend the No Lunch last week. The Community of Hope did, and as a member of the Optimist Club, we support some of their work, and so I attended. And there was a story that was told, just a very brief story, that the church had been approached by one of the schools in the area because there were several students who had gotten behind in their lunch payments by $12, and if you get behind, you can't get lunch. And so they approached them, and so they paid their debt. And that's just kind of sad to think about, that kids go to school and are hungry. So I think we should really look at, as a town, different things we can do on top of what we already do with Meals on Wheels and this, to look at this issue, maybe work with the school system or something, to help some of these kids that struggle to pay for lunch in our schools here in Garner. That's all I've got. Oh, and as veterans, I had a visitor this past week, and one of my aunt's father is 97. He came to council one time a couple of years ago. He's 97. He's a World War II vet. He's still kicking and doing his sports and stuff. But yeah, it's a rare treat to have those veterans around.
Absolutely is. Yeah, thanks, sure. And Mr. Vance?
Yes, I would just like to echo what has been said in reference to the Community of Hope and also the other organizations that are helping to bridge that gap when it comes to the food problem we're having within the community. They're doing a fantastic job, and they really work hard. Yes, problem, and my hat's off to everyone who is doing something like that to help out not only the kids but the families that are struggling within the community. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, sir.
And I wish everybody the best tomorrow.
Okay, yeah.
Tag on to that something that some people aren't aware of, and some people aren't aware of. There are people here that are starving for food and meals. There's a homeless ministry at Garner Methodist, and in the last few weeks, it's gone from 40 or so people, it's up to 60, 61. And something people don't realize is many of those people don't have access to showers, so they come in there and able to get a shower. But when they come, usually they change underwear and socks and get new because they don't wash the other ones. They get thrown away. I know you think I might think it's comical, but there is a serious need for shorts, for underwear and socks. Socks, more people are willing to donate, and it's really sad because, again, you don't wash them, they get thrown away, and they get new ones. And if you got 60 people a week, men and women, more men than women, but men and women both, that's a lot. And so it's just something else to keep out with whoever you support. The local and Community Hope is wonderful, Garner Ministries, but it's just something that's out there that you don't really think about, but it's needed every week for those folks. And they're giving a meal there, and some of them are able to get snacks and take it with them. But It's just something you don't think about. I just thought I'd mention that.
Was the event there with the, at your church there this past Saturday? It was a fundraiser for any?
Craft fair for
missions, yeah.
Youth and missions, yes. And I think some of that may go toward buying some of those products
Yeah.
to help.
Okay.
So,
I got a good biscuit while I was over there, so I did.
that's some Beaufort County sausage. I was the one who bought the sausage down in Beaufort County where it was made right there.
Okay, yes.
Just
Very
let you
good.
know.
All right. Okay, and as already been mentioned, obviously tomorrow is voting day. If any people are listening out there, I encourage you to get out and vote. Most of us here know that the turnout for municipal elections is usually well below the number of voters that are eligible to vote, and your council members and local people are the closest to you. They have as much impact or more so than people at a higher level, so I encourage you to get out and exercise your right to vote tomorrow. Okay, ordinarily we would be prepared to go into a closed session, but since our attorney's not here with us, we're going to forego that. Is there anything else that council needs to bring to our attention that we haven't mentioned so far? Ms. Miller, yeah, I meant to have.
I don't have anything to update the council on, thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try to go find out. So I'm going to, at this point, since we finished the agenda, except for the item that is pending, I'm going to declare another.
Wait a second, Rodney.
I think they're coming out now. They're coming out now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Here they come.
Okay, we had already gone back into session and covered the end of the agenda there on those sort of routine items while you folks were away. So at this point in time, I want to move us back to the item that we were discussing before the break, and I'll recognize our attorney, Ms. Jones, at this time.
Mayor, do we need to reopen the hearing?
I move that we continue the
You're right.
hearing that we were, the hearing that we, these two items, item number 3 and 4 on the agenda.
Okay, all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Ahead of myself.
I think Mr. Farrell's going to present what dates that Pulte has authorized that they can work with.
Yeah, and again, thank you for the opportunity to have that sidebar. That was very productive. So what we would like to do to work with the council is in the paragraph 8.4, the fee in lieu paragraph is move the June 30th date to October 1st, 2024. As far as the calculation of the fee in lieu payment, after we have approved plans, we will have our internal engineer prepare a revised cost estimate for the project and submit that to the town staff by June 30th, with the idea being that we will be able to work towards a fee in lieu that is more accurately reflects the current state of the budget at the time the work is approved. And the only other change that we discussed with town staff that we believe is important is in paragraph 8.3, condemnation. It currently has that the town will file those by March 1st, 2024. And in order, again, because site control is important so we can start this project, keep it on time, is we want to add to the end of that just an outside date that the condemnations would be filed no later than April 30th of 2024. And that gives a cushion for permitting, but allows us to keep on track. So those are the 3 changes that we have discussed with town staff, and we would respectfully request that the council authorize us to work on adding that language to the addendum.
So,
Okay.
Again, the condemnation of property will go from March 1st to April 30th. that what you said?
No, we would keep the March 1st date.
Okay.
We would add an outside date that it would be filed no later than, again, since that would help ensure we have site control so we can stay on schedule.
Thank you.
So
Yes, sir.
there's a 30-day letter that has to go out before the condemnation cases can be filed. This gives us ample opportunity to make sure we hit that deadline.
The other day went to October 31 of 24.
October 1st.
Excuse me.
October 1st would be,
1st.
that's the fee in lieu date, would
Right.
move from June to October.
Okay. All right. Ms. Jones, is there anything else you want to add? Okay.
I think that's reasonable to keep the project on track.
Okay. Council, comments, questions from Mr. Farrell? Or
A question to Mr. Vance's point earlier about regular updates. Is there anything in writing about the schedule of updating that we'll get? Our history with the updates has not been great.
So I think we can, if you're amenable to it, add it that on the 1st of every month, we'll receive the town attorney will receive a written report, and then I can share that with council.
He was asking about a monthly report, like I'm assuming just like an email update, or does it need to be a written?
Email update should be sufficient.
By the first of the month?
Okay.
Just on any activities? Sure.
Question before we move forward on that. In reference to that, I was speaking more of a basic status report where we know where you are in the right-of-way process and with other things of that nature be pretty well clearly spelled out so that we will know and have an idea if you're having problems in those areas.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That, we can make sure that the update encompasses whatever activities we're employing that month.
Phones and everything of that nature being hit as well, all that.
anything else from council?
I think that the addition of that is sort of in reference to the goodwill clause, that would be part of that, as a demonstration of goodwill. If we don't get them, then.
Would be. Okay, so council, you've heard the information. Does that change the type of motion we need, Ms. Jones, or?
I think with number one on the screen, the authorizing to execute the addendum with these amendments that have been proffered and accepted by council.
So moved.
Second. Okay. Do we need to take two votes here for the Spotify? Yeah.
Yes, you should vote on the addendum and then separately vote on the spot mobility
Okay.
agreements.
All right, council. So you've heard the motion, and the first item we're voting on is the addendum. So, in favor of that motion, would you vote aye?
Does the hearing have to be?
Any opposition? There is none.
No.
Excuse me, one no vote, okay. That item passes on a vote of 4-1. And the second item there, need a motion.
Authorize the town manager to execute the spot mobility agreement with North Carolina DOT and sub-agreement with Pulte. So moved.
Second. Okay. Any other discussion, concerns? All right, if you favor the motion, would you vote aye? Aye. If you're opposed, no. Okay. That item passes unanimously by the council. Thank you all. Let me just say that items like this can be very challenging and at times heated. I want to thank Ms. Lee for her comments here this evening, and for others who are here, these two ladies here. Thank you. It's been a long evening. And so, but I'm encouraged by the fact that this process is still on hopefully a favorable track, and eventually will work to the advantage of all parties. So,
Please make sure you contact these ladies.
There's two ladies right there, yeah.
Because if you don't, one of them will contact me.
for sure. All right, I believe that concludes that particular section. Have I missed anything under new and old business? I don't think so. So We are now down to the point of either attorney reports, if there aren't any, to the closed session item. So I need a motion, council, to go into closed session.
I move section 143-318-11, subset A, subset 3, to consult with the town attorney regarding litigation.
Second.
Motion properly made and seconded to go into closed session. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. So, council, we will either adjourn to the closed session room.
Can we stay in here?
That the council, having gone in, had brief discussions with our attorney regarding sides.
Just for the record, adopted resolution number 2023-2552 in closed session.
Okay, thank you. Yes. All right. I believe the council now, having completed all of its agenda for this particular meeting, a motion to adjourn would be in order. Okay. Motion made and seconded. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Okay. Good luck to all the candidates tomorrow, voting day. Wish you all well and look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.